I think for decades, literally, we want Airbnb to be the most personal experience of any travel company on the internet. And I think with this update, we're on our way.
Brian Chesky.
Brian Chesky,
co-founder and CEO of Airbnb.
For the past October Chinese national holiday, which is also called Golden Week in China,
The bookings were 4x, 300% higher. I think Airbnb at its best really is about connecting people, especially people from different cultures.
where do you see the future for AI and travel?
It's going to be a multi-year journey, one step at a time.
What are the top 3 moments you'll never forget during this period?
When the pandemic first occurred, the world really started shutting down. It was very difficult, but ultimately we were stronger because of it. Second moment, which is our IPO. And the IPO was one of the biggest in history. So the third chapter moment for us was to grow into that valuation and to become a really, really great company.
What is a good founder mode?
Founder mode was basically inspired by a talk I did. Founder mode is not limited to founders. It's really a mindset. It's a mindset that simply means great leadership is not absence. Great leadership is presence. Steve Jobs did not believe he was a micromanager because he believed he was partnering with people.
Among current founders, whom do you think has the best founder mode management style?
Jensen Huang in NVIDIA, Elon, and then Mark Zuckerberg.
How do you think Sam is doing as the leader of OpenAI?
What Sam has gone through in the last 2 years of OpenAI, I had more than 10 years to learn and grow.
Hello， 小伙伴们，大家好，欢迎收看硅谷101，我是陈倩。在 Airbnb 爱彼迎公司2024年冬季产品发布会之际呢，我们硅谷101非常有幸成为了专访 Airbnb 创始人兼 CEO Brian Chesky 的唯一中文频道。那么 Brian 呢，是我一直非常想要采访的一位科技领袖人物，不光是他的领导风格，还有呢，他在 Airbnb 过去几年关键节点上做出来的策略，他对产品的创新、对 AI 的看法，以及近期在硅谷讨论度非常高的这个 Founder Mode 的创始人模式呢，也是 Brian 最先提出来的。还有呢，就是他作为 OpenAI CEO Sam Altman 的好友 ，Brian 对如今 AI 创业公司创始人的特质有着如何的看法？那么这都是我非常好奇的问题。那因为 Brian 在纽约，所以呢，我们进行了线上采访，40分钟的访谈，非常的精彩。那么接下来就让我们进入和 Brian Chesky 的专访吧。Hi, Brian. Thanks so much for your time attending our interview. First of all, do you want to say hi to our Value One-on-One audience?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you so much for having me on today. Really, really excited to talk to you about Airbnb and some of the new things that we have going on.
Airbnb 在最新的发布会当中宣布了超过50项全新产品功能，其中全面个性化是关键词，想要通过更多的专属推荐为游客优化每一次的旅程规划。那么在采访当中 ，Brian 就表示改变千篇一律的旅行解决方案是他思考了数年的挑战。那么作为服务旅行者的 APP， 从搜索到预订 ，Airbnb 上的定制化、个性化用户体验升级，将是公司未来持续发力的方向。此外呢，对于房东们Airbnb 推出了 Co-host Network 房屋管家会功能，能够让房东们在 Airbnb 平台上邀请其他经验丰富的房屋管家来帮忙管理房源，那这也是解决了不少房东精力和运营上的挑战。Congratulations on the recent product release. This product release marks the start of a more personalized Airbnb. Can you share your vision for personalization and how it aligns with your long-term strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think for years, for decades, literally, if you want to book travel on the internet, you go to an app or a website, and it's kind of one size fits all. You have the same settings as everyone else. But we want to change that because so many people have already used Airbnb. And we asked, what if when you came to Airbnb, it would be a much more personalized experience? What if we took into account all the times you've used Airbnb? What if we took your profile information into account and gave you a distinct personalized experience that's different than anyone else's experience? And that's the beginning of what we're doing. We have a number of new features. For example, we now, when you go to search for a destination, we give you suggested destinations. And these suggested destinations are based on places you searched for in the past and what we know about you. We give you search tips to help you guide you through the booking process to tell you, hey, if you try to find a 6-night stay and there's a week discount, we say, hey, add another night and you'll get a discount. We have recommended filters based on your prior bookings and the search you're doing. So if you're going to a ski lodge, we might recommend a hot tub because we know you might want a hot tub, and because you're going to be cold and you might want to warm up. So these are just some of the things we're doing. There's over 50 upgrades for guests, and a large percent of these upgrades are really aiming to make Airbnb a more personalized experience. We want Airbnb to be the most personal experience of any travel company on the internet. And I think with this update, we're on our way.
What is a killer feature among this product launch that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I mean, by far, the one that I would like to highlight the most is actually a feature for hosts, a new product for hosts, and that is the co-host network. So basically, Airbnb is a great way to make money. And a lot of people have expressed interest in making money off of their home. But the problem is a number of people said that hosting is too much work. They can't get started. Or maybe they want to rent out their second home and they don't live in that local area. So what if we could match them with somebody who could take care of their home? And historically, the way you would do this is either you wouldn't host, or you go on like Google and you'd search for a property management company. The problem is the property management companies, the average rating on Airbnb is about a 4.62. So we thought, what if we built a network of co-hosts that could partner with you and take care of your home and take care of your guests? And the co-host network is a network of 10,000 hosts in 10 different countries that we're launching. They have an average rating on Airbnb of 4.86. 73% of them are superhost. And they are some of our very best hosts. And you can we will match you with the one that's right for you based on like 80 different variables and factors, including like where you're located. That's the most important criteria. And we make it really easy to integrate. You can choose to have them help you with the entire process, or they can have them help you with just parts of the hosting job. So we think if we do this, we're going to unlock eventually hundreds of thousands, maybe even one day millions of new homes on Airbnb. And that's going to give people more options and more choices to stay. And it's also going to make Airbnb more affordable because we're not going to be as supply constrained in key markets.
那很多旅行喜欢用 Airbnb 的用户，包括我自己在内啊，对上面有特色的房屋和体验呢非常的感兴趣。那这些体验都是酒店所不能够提供的。而在过去几年，我们观察到 Airbnb 呢也在强化体验这个核心产品点，这让 Airbnb 最近的品牌营销呢有好几次非常出圈的案例啊，是吸引了非常大的市场热度。这就包括了在去年芭比电影上映的时候 ，Airbnb 就趁机推出了芭比梦幻屋，邀请用户入住这栋豪华芭比别墅，并且呢由演员 Ryan Gosling 扮演的肯成为 Airbnb 的房东。那么在电影上映期间呢，我还记得当时媒体对 Airbnb 芭比梦幻屋的各种报道啊是非常出圈。那么在今年年中的时候呢 ，Airbnb 继续加强旅客们对这种特色营销，推出了全新特色分类王牌 icons， 来自全球的音乐、影视、艺术、体育等等圈层的名流大咖呢，是变身 Airbnb icons 房东，包括从奥赛博物馆醒来，推窗就能够看到奥运盛会。还有呢，在法拉利博物馆度过奇妙的一夜。此外啊，为了庆祝《飞屋环球记》上映15周年，那么 Airbnb 呢是直接搞了个飞屋奇旅，如果能够订上一晚，真的可以说是人生名场面了。那么这些难得的体验啊，是赢得了非常多旅行爱好者和媒体的热情啊，而这其实也将转化到 Airbnb 的增长上。Brian 在专访当中就对我们说，增长将是 Airbnb 接下来的重点目标。那么这分为3步策略：加强现有市场的份额渗透，继续开拓国际市场，以及呢持续产品创新。Right, that sounds exciting. I know Airbnb has consistently launched major product updates twice a year, from categories to guest favorites, icons, and now the personalized app. How do you feel Airbnb has progressed so far, and what direction do you see it's heading in next?
Yeah, I think we are accelerating the improvements of Airbnb. Just to give you an example, over the last 2 years alone, we made more than 400 upgrades and improvements to Airbnb, including 70 just in this October release alone. So we're developing more and more momentum, really perfecting the core business And we're now looking forward to new products and new offerings in the coming years to come. So I think in future interviews, I hope to be able to share new things that we're doing.
That's great. Where will Airbnb find growth momentum over the next 5 years in international markets especially? And what strategy will Airbnb adopt to capitalize on these growth potentials?
I mean, there's a lot of opportunities for growth. I mean, if I could break them into 3 buckets, the first one would be we're only scratching the surface of how big our core business could be, even in our more mature markets. You know, for everyone who stays in Airbnb, about 9 people stay in a hotel. If we can just get one of those people to stay in Airbnb, we double the size of our business. Number 2, you mentioned international markets. So, you know, we're in nearly every country in the world, but we do not have nearly the market penetration in, say, Japan or China or Korea or countries in Latin America or even parts of Europe that we say have in the United States, France, or Australia. And so if we could increase the market penetration by just investing a little bit more time, energy, and resources in these local markets, then we can see a huge amount of growth. And in China, for example, what we're really focused on is the corridors, the destinations that Chinese travelers are traveling to. Japan is a big one. Parts of Southeast Asia are really large destinations. The United States is a really popular destination. And so what we want to do is figure out where all the Chinese travelers want to travel to and make sure we have homes in those destinations. And that's one of the things that we're really focused on. So the first one, again, is just scratching the core surface of our core business. The second one is international markets. And the third is eventually new products and new offerings that are coming starting next year.
For the past October Chinese national holiday, which is also called Golden Week in China, did you see a burst of Airbnb bookings from outbound Chinese tourists?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really, really big week. And just to give you a point of reference, if you compare the bookings for a Golden Week this past October to Labor Day weekend, which was in May, the bookings were 4x, 300% higher.
Wow, that's amazing. I think Airbnb has been pretty creative in recent years on some of the marketing campaigns like Barbie's Malibu Dream House, as well as a bunch of traveling with local activities. I myself have been a heavy user actually. In Italy last year, we went on a travel hunting tour with a local chef. We got to meet his family, his brother, his wife, his kids, and his dogs. He had 4 golden retrievers. I know you had a golden retriever as well. I'm so sorry for your recent loss, but that trip was so lovely. I booked all the trips on Airbnb and I really enjoyed the experiences. So pop culture is a big focus for Airbnb with the Icons launch. How have your creative efforts resonated with Chinese travelers? What type of campaigns work best for them?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that earlier this year, on May 1st, we launched Icons, the world's most extraordinary experiences from some of the biggest icons in pop culture. And it was really inspired by some promotions we've done, in particular Barbie. Last year, the Barbie movie came out. As part of promoting Barbie, we worked at Barbie to take a house in Malibu and that looked like the Malibu Barbie dream house. We customized it to look fairly uncannily similar to the Barbie Malibu Dream House, and it became a pop culture sensation. In fact, it got more press for Airbnb than our IPO. So we started thinking to ourselves, what if this wasn't a one-off? What if we had a category dedicated to some of the biggest icons in culture? And that's what we did. We launched with the Up House. Up is a movie by Pixar. We had a house that was 40,000 pounds that was lifted 40 feet in the air with 8,000 balloons. To answer your question, what's popular with Chinese travelers, I'd say probably the Musée d'Orsay. So the Musée d'Orsay is a very famous art museum that's a former rail station, and there's got this very iconic clock tower. And you can walk into the clock tower, but it's historically been just an empty space. And so we turned that clock tower into what might be one of the most extraordinary bedrooms on earth. It is so cool. And when you walk out to the terrace, you had a view to the opening games of the Olympics on the River Seine. So it was such a great experience. So I'd say the Musée d'Orsay was particularly popular. But like we just launched an experience with Doja Cat, where you can do a private living room listening session. Prince, before he died, acquired the home featured in the movie Purple Rain. And that's now in the family's estate. And we will work with them to list that home on Airbnb. And it was renovated and made to look like the film, but actually in some ways more idealized and a little bit nicer. So we have some incredible experiences coming up. We have Polly Pocket, which it was, if you know, any girl that played with a clamshell toy that you could fit in your pocket, we built a 40-foot version of that. The bigger point here is, why are we doing this? I think the reason we're doing this is, number one, I think it's really fun. And we love to capture people's imagination. And we've done it a few times. We thought, why don't we keep doing it? But it's also really great free marketing for us. It's really great marketing promotion. It's really what you might call earned media. You're earning the media. You're not paying for placement. You're paying to build them, but that's about it. And I think what it does is it introduces new audiences to Airbnb. It keeps us very relevant with Gen Zers and basically like younger travelers that are on social media. It plays very well on social media. And it's also great to target certain countries. Like in India, we had Janhvi Kapoor, one of the biggest Bollywood actresses, list her family home that had never been seen to the public before on Airbnb. And so it turns out to be a really like aspirational campaign. And I think sometimes the best marketing is your product. And this is a real product that you can book. It's kind of, you need to get a golden ticket. So, thousands or even sometimes millions of people will visit the pages and only a few people can win them. But I think that for those who do, I think it's a once in a lifetime experience.
Right. But do you think language is a barrier for some of the Chinese or Asian travelers trying the local experience?
I think that language can be, but the thing that I think is important is that when you search an Airbnb, number one, you can filter by language, so you can find people that speak your language, and they'll reference the language. Also, when you're booking, we have a translation engine that can actually help translate for you, so you can read the description, you can read the reviews. It really facilitates communication. So I think these are some of the things that we do that I think will really, really be helpful.
Yeah, I think with the AI audio models getting better and better, so hopefully maybe soon we can do the simultaneous translation very soon.
Yeah, this is the most difficult, kind of intra-language communication will ever be for the rest of our lives. It's only going to get easier and more real time with essentially AI-powered translation. And I think eventually, this is going to be a massive development, right? That's one of the most important things AI can do. It can create a common language across communities and cultures. And as a common language is formed, you're going to have a lot more connections across cultures. And that's going to make the world feel a little bit smaller. And I think Airbnb is definitely on that path. It's very much consistent with what we're trying to do. At some larger level, right? Like on the one hand, on the surface, we want to provide, really unique homes and experiences that people can't get anywhere else. But at some larger level, I think Airbnb at its best really is about connecting people, especially people from different cultures. And I think it does that uniquely well, better than almost any other large travel company in the world.
那身为科技公司Airbnb 对 AI 的布局到底如何？身在硅谷呢，我必须要问一下 Brian 他对 AI 的理解，以及呢 AI 对旅游行业来说意味着什么样的变革？根据美国财经媒体 CNBC 的报道Airbnb 在2023年花费了上亿美元收购了初创公司 Game Planner 的 AI， 也说明公司在 AI 上确实开始了布局。那 Brian 对我们表示，不会自己从零开始去训练大模型。Airbnb 的重点在应用层上 ，Airbnb 在界面设计和应用程序构建方面是非常的出色，拥有世界上最好的团队之一。那公司呢也有信心在接下来数年内打造 AI 平台和体验。So for my next question, since we're both based in Silicon Valley, I have to ask you the AI question. Airbnb acquired GamePlanner.ai in 2023, and you mentioned earlier this year you guys won't be building your own LLM, but plan to work with the foundation model companies for better traveling experience, friendly user interface. So where do you see the future for AI and travel?
The future is going to be on the application layer. So, you have the models, and there's a number of models. OpenAI makes one of the most, makes probably the most advanced model, but then Google and Anthropic and Meta and Mistral, there's a lot of models and there's more and more emerging. The real value to travel, and I believe the majority economic value will be in building the applications on top. And I think, we are nearly 2 years since the launch of ChatGPT. And there's been a huge amount of development of GPUs. There's been a huge development in models. There's not been a major development in applications. If you were to hold your phone up and look at the apps that you have on your home screen, then I'll ask, well, how have they all changed through generative AI? The answer is very little. Most of them haven't, including ours, haven't yet changed because of generative AI. That's okay. I think the lesson is it's going to take time, that the innovation is starting more at the foundational level, and that it's going to take some time for us to build the applications that can leverage AI. Travel is going to be completely transformed by AI. A lot of people are creating travel planning, like travel agents. But I think the challenge people are going to have is they're all trying to basically scrape the same data from Google and just create a different layer or wrapper. I think where we really thrive is we are completely vertically integrated. We have over 8 million homes. We've got unique tools, unique data. We know a lot about our guests and our hosts. They have profiles. We have hundreds of millions of reviews. And the other thing is we are really, really great, I believe, at interface design and designing and building applications. I think we have one of the best teams in the world. And hopefully when people get their hands on some of the updates to this app, they'll agree that when they use our app, it's really delightful. So imagine if you could bring that user interface to a truly AI-powered app that rethinks interfaces for the next technology paradigm.
So you said it will take years to rebuild Airbnb into a fully AI-powered application. Why it takes so long?
It's going to be a multi-year journey. And I think we're going to be one of the fastest. I think we'll be one of the fastest, and it will still be a multi-year journey. I think there's a lesson for all these technologies. Maybe self-driving cars is another lesson. I remember 10 years ago, everyone said by 2020, self-driving cars would take over a huge amount of the fleets. They're finally starting to reach some critical mass, but the vast majority of people still drive themselves. I think AI will happen faster than self-driving cars, but just because the technology is almost ready doesn't mean society immediately changes and adapts. And I think that while we all got really excited after ChatGPT launched and we thought, oh my God, the world's going to change, and it will, it is going to take time. You have to build the technology. Then people have to create new apps, and then people have to adopt those new apps. And there's going to be a multi-year curve to be able to do that.
And technology-wise, what needs to happen in order to rebuild Airbnb into this fully AI-powered new thing?
It just really, probably the most fundamental thing is just redesign the app. Think of the app as like a house. And there's all different rooms in the house. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to basically redesign the house one room at a time with technology that's now available to us that wasn't before. And that's what we're starting to do. And you're actually going to start to see some of this trickle out over the coming years. And so we're going to start with smaller updates. One of the major things you're going to see is customer service. When you contact customer service, more and more, it's going to be AI powered. And this is really great because AI can speak every language. It can work 24/7, and it can read a corpus of all the contacts Airbnb's ever gotten. And it can help agents really create the best answers. So it can be the first line of defense. It can respond. It can help you take actions. And then when you do need a real human, it's the ultimate power tool for the agent to be able to help support you. So that's a big area that you're going to see really starting to affect the Airbnb experience. But there are other things as well.
Right. So you think that's kind of step by step, not like AI is coming overnight.
I think step by step. I don't think there's a one single moment where we unveil a new AI powered Airbnb. I think it's going to be a multi-year journey, one step at a time.
Airbnb 除了其产品受到旅行爱好者和房东们的关注之外啊 ，Brian Chesky 这位创始人也被视为硅谷科技以及创业的领军人物之一。他对领导力的看法，那比如说最近在硅谷是讨论的异常火热的创始人模式 Founder Mode 啊，就是他最开始提出来的。还有就是 Airbnb 的企业文化，如今永久远程工作 Live Anywhere, Work Anywhere 构成了 Airbnb 独特的企业文化。Brian 就曾经表示啊，这样的办公模式为 Airbnb 的员工提供了随时随地生活和工作的灵活性，它将释放一些惊人的创造力和创新。同时呢 ，Brian 也是 OpenAI CEO Sam Altman 的好友，那他如何看待 Sam 如今面临的挑战和领导力？我也问了 Brian 这样的问题。我们最后一部分的对话非常的精彩。I want to switch the topic a little bit from AI to more of Airbnb, the company you're building. You guys have gone through a lot since the pandemic started back in 2019. First of all, downsized your workforce, then unexpected traveling boom, then you had to hire back tons of people, then a pretty good IPO. Now the world is finally back to normal. So what are the top 3 moments you'll never forget during this period? So it could be the directions you made right or mistakes you made, or probably some of the lessons you learned.
I think it was like if I had to pick 3 moments, the first moment would be when the pandemic first occurred. You know, really, I would call it mid-March, about March 15th, the Ides of March, where the world really started shutting down, especially the United States. That States like really started shutting down around March 15th. And then it culminated in us having to do a layoff, I think around like May 5th. So like 6-7 weeks later. And it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It was very difficult, but ultimately we were stronger because of it. That was really the first moment. At that moment, we put our IPO on hold and we thought, travel's not going to recover for a while, and something remarkable happened. People started booking Airbnbs, but they weren't crossing borders. They won't go into cities. They weren't traveling for business, but they were getting in their car and they were driving within a couple hundred miles to shelter in place in an Airbnb rather than stay at the home they lived in. This led to a resurgence of our business, and we were a much more efficient business. And so that led to the second moment, which was our IPO. And the IPO was one of the biggest in history by, if you measure it by like the kind of, increase to our market cap on the first day of the offering. The stock price more than doubled from the issue price. And it was incredible. And that was the second moment. But now we were like, approximately $100 billion market cap company, and there were really, really big expectations, and we weren't even profitable. So the third chapter moment for us was to grow into that valuation and to become a really, really great company that was highly profitable and had a really solid foundation and a great user experience. And so we spent the last few years working on becoming profitable. We now generate more than $4 billion of free cash flow, billions of dollars on an EBITDA basis. So we're one of the most profitable companies in all Silicon Valley for our size. If you take the amount of free cash flow that's generated for every dollar earned, it is one of the highest in all of Silicon Valley. We've also made hundreds and hundreds of improvements to our product to make Airbnb an easier service, a more reliable service, a more affordable service. And so we are always going to be improving Airbnb, but we're about to enter maybe the next moment. And the next moment will be expansion. It's going to be expanding to new geographies, new markets, and it's going to be also expanding new products and new services. And you couldn't do any of that until you first became more profitable to fund it, then to fix and improve the foundation of your core service so people love your service so much they want more things from you. And we are now approaching that next phase. And I'm really, really excited about the next few years because I think it's going to really capture a lot of people's imagination. And I think we're going to expand what Airbnb is to people.
That's a great answer indeed. Now, many tech firms are calling their employees to go back to the office, like Amazon. But I know Airbnb hasn't done so. In fact, you told employees back in 2022 they can work remotely forever. So why are you guys different from other big tech companies? And what kind of work culture do you want to build within the company that's different from the other big techs?
Yeah, here's the difference. I don't think you need to have a one-size-fits-all approach. There are certain employees that I do ask to come in the office, but I don't ask everyone. We take it on a case-by-case basis. And there are some people for whom they don't need to be in an office 5 days a week. They don't even need to be in the office every week. There are certain positions where people are like working really collaboratively and they're really creative functions. They want to be a physical space together. Then it makes sense for them to be in the office. The key is not to be one size fits all. And the reason one shouldn't be one size fits all is if you require everyone, 100% of your employees to come to an office and you have thousands of people. First of all, thousands of people can't even interact with thousands of other people. And I can't possibly interface with thousands of people. So I don't need thousands of people around me. But the second is if I limit myself to hiring people in a commuting radius, then that's going to really limit the amount of talent that we can hire. So I think it's really about finding that balance. Finding that balance where it's not one size fits all. It's not a simple policy. If you can summarize your work policy in a sentence, maybe it's too one size fits all. Maybe you should be very specific on a person by person basis. And everyone has a unique work arrangement that makes the most sense for their job and their team. The only other thing I'd say is I don't think you need to have people in the office to work hard or to know they're working. The best thing you can do is have very clear deadlines. And we have these 2 releases a year, May and October, November. This one's in October. And the way I operate Airbnb is I review all the work every week, every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, every 8 weeks. That is the thing that keeps us working hard and on pace. That we have a deadline and we check in rigorously and frequently on our progress towards the deadline. And things are really well tracked. We have an extremely robust program management function. And that is the best accountability mechanism I can ever imagine, not seeing people physically in office. I don't think people physically in office is the way you hold them accountable. I do think it's great for a connection though. And I do think there's a real value to people coming into an office regularly. But I think the frequency should be very person by person, their job, their circumstance. And that's the big takeaway. It's personalized, not one size fits all.
The last part of the discussion is relevant to the founder mode conversation, which has been heatedly debated here in the Valley. The term actually came out from your conversation with Paul Graham, and he then wrote in a blog post that went viral. Then here's a debate between founders should embrace a more hands-on management style versus criticism worrying such management style could turn into micromanagement. So I think the concern is really, it's hard to draw the line, right? So can you clarify a little bit more? What is a good founder mode?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. You know why? Because founder mode was basically inspired by a talk I did. It was a talk that I did off the record to 200 founders who were in later stage Y Combinator companies. And what I did is I described the journey of basically learning how to become an effective CEO. And what I was told was that great people hire great people and they trust them and give them operating freedom to do their job. And actually, it turns out that is not what most great effective leaders do, that they're in the details with their team. So to answer your question, this word micromanagement comes up a lot. And micromanagement, by the way, is kind of like a pejorative. It's kind of like a bad word, right? No one wants to work for a micromanager. No one wants to admit being a micromanager. So let me say this about micromanagement. Founder mode was very much inspired by Steve Jobs. I got to a point where I was running Airbnb. It was 2019, where I was CEO for like 11, 12 years. And I got to a point where I kept letting go more and more. And as I let go more and more, the standards went down. There was more bureaucracy. There was more politics. And in other words, by trying to empower people, people were becoming disempowered. And then I discovered, some of the methods of Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs was in the details. He was in all the details. But was Steve Jobs a micromanager? Well, let me tell you what Steve Jobs said. Steve Jobs did not believe he was a micromanager because he believed he was partnering with people. He was in the details with them. In other words, he was like an athlete on the field with them. But he wasn't just telling them what to do. He was debating with them and he was trying to ask them for their arguments. And the argument that you should only trust people to do their job, the problem is you've got a lot of specialists. And a lot of times those specialists have conflicting goals. And you as a leader have to basically bring them together and be able to make a decision based on the collective wisdom of a bunch of people's recommendations that sometimes even conflict with one another. So I believe that a leader should be in as many details as they can. I don't know where you draw the line. I think you draw the line with your own capacity and time. But I think what you should draw the line is you want to be autocratic. In other words, you don't want to just tell people what to do, because often the people who are managing are experts more than you are. But what do you have? You have the passion. You have the vision. You have the big picture. You can cross-pollinate and you can see how everything fits together. You are the keeper of the standards. You are the keeper of the intensity and the pace. And founder mode is not limited to founders. It's really a mindset. It's a mindset that simply means great leadership is not absence. Great leadership is presence.
You mentioned Steve Jobs as a good example. Among current founders, whom do you think has the best founder mode management style?
I have there are so many different people that great founders of our generation. And I think everyone has. I wouldn't want to call it any one, but maybe if I call out a couple cohorts. Among the founders that are further along than me, the three founders that kind of stand out that are further along than me would be Jensen Huang at NVIDIA, Elon, obviously doing all the things he's doing at Tesla, SpaceX, and then Mark Zuckerberg. Now, they're all different and they, presumably have, different strengths. Among my peer set, there's a huge cohort of founders, Daniel Ek at Spotify, Toby Luckey at Shopify, Patrick Collison, Tony at DoorDash. I can kind of go down the list. There's a number of people of my peer set. I mean, Sam Altman, certainly one of my very close friends. And then, of course, there's the next generation. So I don't think there's any one. They're kind of by generation, right? And I think there's so many. And the interesting thing is we all have a lot of similarities, but we also have our own styles. And one of the things I'm eager to do is at some point, I want to write down what it means to me. What is founder mode? That 2-hour talk. Well, what did I say? My goal is to eventually write it all down and be able to start comparing notes to other founders. Because what I'm most curious about is how much we share in common versus how we have different methods. But ultimately, I'd love to be able to communicate more with people to be able to help founders. Because I think the common thing here is many of us felt like we're a little bit on our own, trying to learn lessons and learning the same lessons over and over again. And the question is, if we were to share more information, could we learn the lessons faster and not go through some of the pain of those before us?
For AI startups today, including OpenAI, I feel like things move so fast for them. Founders and tech leaders have to get lots of resources, talent, and capital in order to develop the next generation of large language models. I'm just wondering whether the founder mode today in 2024 is this somehow different from the time when you started Airbnb back in 2008? Is there any difference?
It's a really good question. It doesn't strike me as that different. I think the principles of entrepreneurship and great leadership actually have not changed that much since I certainly came to Silicon Valley 16, 17 years ago. And I don't think they've changed a lot, frankly, and probably in the last 100 years. In other words, I think the technology changes, consumer taste changes, but human nature and what is great leadership, it doesn't actually change all that much. So the things that change is the speed of information, the speed of communication. I think what's different is people are kind of online all the time now. Your phone is in your pocket and you can text and call and chat and email all day and night. I don't really use email that much. I respond to emails, but I'll very rarely write an email. 5-10 years ago, I would write a lot of email. My primary form of communication now is text message. And I think a lot of founders are essentially using text because it's more real time and it's not subject based. It's kind of contact based. It's you have an ongoing conversation. So I think those are some changes, but that's and also with AI, you have more leverage. So you don't need as many employees, or said differently, the same number of employees can do a lot more work because you basically have these incredibly powerful models that give you really a lot more leverage. But that's the story of technology. Before I started Airbnb, everyone needed to have their own servers. Then AWS came out and you didn't need your own servers. You could use a cloud service. So I think it's all a continuation. that communication is getting more real time. The job is a little bit more 7 days a week. There's a little, that's something to be careful about. There's a little, like your work can follow you home via your phone. You're getting more leverage. But I think the principles of leadership have not changed all that much. And I don't anticipate they will.
Right. I know you are a good friend of Sam Altman, and of course, I think it's really hard to be the leader of OpenAI today because everybody is watching him. You have the ethics challenge, you have the top talents leaving, you have competition from nearly all the big players. You have to deal with the investor relations, right? How do you think Sam is doing as the leader of OpenAI?
I think Sam Altman is scaling faster than almost any leader ever has. I mean, I think it's important to know that OpenAI is, by some measures, growing as faster than any company in Silicon Valley history. What Sam has gone through in the last 2 years of OpenAI, I had more than 10 years to learn and grow. And people before me had 20, 30, 40 years. If you look at the length of time it took for companies to get to $1 billion revenue or $4 billion revenue to get to their first 100 million users, Sam basically was only a few hundred people doing research before the launch of ChatGPT. And the last 2 years, he's become one of the most high profile founders. And he's basically like, there was an old saying, I think Reid Hoffman told me this. He's like, starting a company is like jumping off the cliff and assembling the airplane on the way down. And the difference is when today AI startups grow so fast, especially OpenAI, that you have a lot less time to assemble that airplane. And so I think, when I see narratives and there's a lot of, there's definitely a lot of people opining on how much change there is at OpenAI and all the challenges. To me, that's just an output of hypergrowth. Hypergrowth means that like if your company more than doubles every year or every few months, every time your company doubles, you almost have to rebuild it. That's a huge amount of change. That is a highly unstable thing. And so I think when you take into account how fast they're growing, I think it's remarkable what they've accomplished the last 2 years.
So the real last question is, where is your next vacation destination? Any suggestions to our audience?
I'm kind of still trying to figure that out. But I think, we're seeing a few really popular trends on Airbnb. One thing is beach destinations in Southeast Asia, especially for Chinese travelers. So like Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia. Also ski destinations in Europe. So whether it's Switzerland or Italy or the French Alps, those are also really, really popular as well. So I think those are really great. I, of course, being in the United States, closer to home destinations would be like the Caribbean would be really great in the winter as well. So these are some of the great destinations. It's always a great time to travel. I mean, but I think post-pandemic, we are seeing that travel is becoming an increasingly important part of people's lives. And we're also seeing that among younger travelers, and those younger travelers are often in China. It's the largest population of Gen Z travelers that are frequently traveling in the world. They're more on social media. Social media is very much driven by travel content, people sharing where they're going. It is the ultimate aspiration. And I think you're going to see a lot more people traveling and dreaming of travel in the future.
Okay, so those are all the questions I have. Any question I didn't ask? Anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, thank you for your time. And just to recap, we're really excited about the upgrades we made. We made over 70 improvements for guests and hosts, over 50 upgrades for guests to make Airbnb a more personalized experience. The basic idea is when you come to Airbnb, over time, we want you to feel like the app knows you, understands you, you have a better experience. And I'm really, really excited about the co-host network because Airbnb's always been a great way to make extra money, but not everyone has the time. And now everyone can host because they can get a co-host.
All right, Brian, thanks so much for your time and really looking forward to meeting you in person next time in the Bay Area.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
好了，那么以上呢就是本次我们硅谷101与 Airbnb 创始人兼 CEO Brian Chesky 的专访对话。那无论你是 Airbnb 的用户，是旅游爱好者，还是公司管理人员、创业者，或者呢是 AI 和科技从业人员，我也希望大家能够从我们这次的对谈当中得到养分、灵感和激励。感谢大家对我们硅谷101的支持，你们的点赞、留言和转发是支持我们做好深度科技和商业内容的最佳动力。那我们就下期节目再见了，拜。